For the past 2 years, things haven't been going very well for workers in America. Wages have essentially remained flat for the past 5 years or so. Wages after inflation have gone up maybe 1%. There's been a lot written about workers losing health insurance. A lot of workers are losing pensions. They're being replaced by 401ks, which generally aren't nearly as good, nearly as generous, nearly as secure for giving people a good retirement. At the same time, companies are doing very well. Profits have gone up 10, 11, 12, 13% a year since the recession ended in November 2001. That's the last recession, not the one that might be beginning right now. Worker productivity has gone up about 15, 20% again since 2001. And a lot of economists are saying there's something wrong here. Corporations are doing well, productivity is going up, yet wages remain absolutely flat after inflation, and benefits are growing worse. And one of the issues my book discusses is the growing inequality, the growing distance between those at the very top, especially the top 2-3%, and the rest of Americans. Wages for the bottom fifth of income for the bottom fifth of households has gone up just 6% since 1979. Compensation for the middle fifth have gone up maybe 15-70% after inflation, but for the top 1%, income has more than tripled. So, a lot of people say there's something wrong here. So why has that happened? Over the past 3-4 decades, there have been some profound changes in the nature of American capitalism. One of the changes is, 30, 40, 50 years ago, in many ways, it was a managerial capitalism, industrial capitalism. There was a lot of emphasis on maximizing production. That meant you need a lot of workers. You wanted to treat them well. You wanted to maintain good relations with your workers. And over the years, as mutual funds have grown, as hedge funds have grown, as Wall Street has gotten more power, there's been a shift in the style of capitalism in the United States, kind of from industrial managerial capitalism to investor capitalism. And now Wall Street managers, hedge fund managers, private equity managers, they push corporate heads much harder to maximize profits, to maximize the stock price, and that often means do your darndest to reduce costs, which often translates into freeze wages or lay off 1,000 workers and move this plant to Sri Lanka or Hong Kong. And related to that change is there's been a shift. After World War II, there was a wonderful development in the United States, even in the history of capitalism, that there really was an effort between the General Motors and the Fords and the U.S. Steels, prodded by labor unions to share the prosperity. And that largely explained why America developed the world's most prosperous and biggest middle class. And there was this unspoken but very real social contract where people were kind of guaranteed job security. There were safety nets of health insurance, pensions. Many companies gave life insurance to workers, widow benefits. And as we've moved from managerial capitalism to investor capitalism, as Wall Street has gotten more powers, there's been more emphasis on maximizing profits. We've seen many companies slowly tear apart that wonderful social contract that was developed after World War II. Wall Street puts pressure on CEOs to increase profits. So CEOs figure out, how are we going to increase profits? They have to put pressure down the line. So the CEO of Taco Bell or of Walmart or of Burger King or of Home Depot might put pressure on their restaurant managers or store managers to make sure they don't spend more than X amount on payroll. And that can translate into many ugly things. We see, unfortunately, managers, pressuring, bullying people to work off the clock, meaning working unpaid hours. They pressure people to work overtime, maybe not paying them time and a half. In my book, I write about a really nasty thing where, some managers go into the computer and erase hours that people have worked from the time clock. And I quote one professor from the University of Buffalo who says, many corporations prefer to hire bullies as their store managers or restaurant managers because they're the people who get the job done. They're the people who get the job done, while ensuring that payroll doesn't exceed the target amount. Over the years, in many ways, workplace regulation in the United States has declined. In sheer numbers, the number of federal workplace regulators as a percentage of the workforce has gone way down. The number of wage and hour regulators in the federal government has dropped, I think, by about 15% over the past 30 years, whereas the workforce has increased by about 50%. And at the same time, over the past 20, 30 years, labor unions grew weaker and weaker. And if you don't have government inspectors regulating the workforce, regulating the workplace to try to prevent minimum wage violations, overtime violations, safety violations, it would be helpful to have unions doing some of that, but unions have grown weaker and less effective. So, for the average American worker, wages have been stagnant over the past 5-6 years, and now housing prices are going down, so they can't take money out of the houses in the form of second mortgages. So that's hurting their buying power. We're seeing oil prices, go up hugely. Workers are really squeezed in many ways, and it's no surprise we're seeing an increase in bankruptcy, an increase in foreclosures. Yes, there's a subprime mortgage mess, which is pushing even more people into foreclosures, but it's a very difficult situation right now. Last year, 2007, wages for the average worker declined by about 1% because inflation has increased very strongly, mainly because of soaring fuel costs, and wages just haven't kept up.